Hey, friends, welcome to another episode of Unplugged with Taylor. Today I'm here with Christine Alfred. She is the co host of See You on the Other Side podcast, a podcast about all things plant medicine. Christine, what else would you say to introduce yourself?
Oh
I don't want to leave anything out.
gosh.
So many things. And this is take two. We're
This
going to get it right this time.
this is take two. Okay. Um yeah, I well one, the podcast we do talk about plant medicine, but we talk about a lot of other different healing modalities as well. We
Higher states of consciousness.
Yes, we just want to explore all of the things. Plant medicine being, I feel like, the thing for me and for Leah, I think that was like just clicked for us.
Yeah.
And things just kind of really made sense. Um, Other than that, I feel like I'm just a mom. I'm just trying to
Well, you
kind
have
of
other business ventures, though.
I
That's why I was like, I don't want to
I
leave any of them
know,
out.
I know. I own investment properties with my fiancé. Yeah, I feel like there's like just kind of a lot of different things that I do, little things. I still personal train a little bit, but yeah.
He's hot, by the way.
Who?
Your fiance. I was looking at your like family photos from the
Mhm.
beach, and
Yeah.
I was like, they are like a fit couple.
I I think he's the hottest.
Yeah.
Daddy Toners is what I call him. And it's so funny because I had gotten divorced, and when we met, I had never dated anyone with children. I was
Mhm.
still in my 20s. And I found out he had two teenage daughters. And I'm like, bro, how the fuck old are you? I had never dated anybody older, and he's 12 years older than me. But it's like he's my person for sure.
I have only ever dated, like, all my long-term relationships were significantly older than me. Like,
Really.
usually like a decade or yeah, I mean, some of it I think in retrospect is like
Say it.
I think that I had this thing like for me, this is your story, but
But
caveat.
I still want to hear it.
For me, I think that boyfriends were always my family. So like starting in high school, I had a boyfriend that like I would go stay with him, and then I had a boyfriend in college.
Yeah.
We lived together. He was my family. So it made it really hard for me to like leave relationships when they were no longer good because that was my family. You know, that boyfriend after that, and they were always except for the one in high school. They were always older. And I think like part of me was like wanted to be parented, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And
In a sense.
I
But you and I have talked about this before, and that's
yeah.
not this relationship. I remember telling you this. Yeah.
Yeah. I relate to that a lot. I kind of relate to that with Tony because it's different though, but I feel like he has been very healing for my mother and father wounds in a way because as a man he has been very like nurturing and gentle with me, but also I feel protected and safe around him, um and like all I ever wanted in this life was to have a family, and that we are a blended family. So it was hard and it was a lot of work. It We did a lot of healing together and we've done a lot of healing individually, but I am now proud to say like this is a family that I've built.
Yeah.
Like with my bonus daughters, he has two children from a previous marriage, but like that was a lot of work, but like I have built a very strong relationship with the both of them,
You can feel
and
that in the pictures.
I earned it.
Like it comes through in
Yeah.
photos.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would like I love them very very much. I am not trying to be their mother. I don't ever want to do that, but I always want to be show up for them in a way that I will always be a safe space for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I think I don't think I've been perfect. I think it's really hard being a step parent, especially when there are other maybe outside factors that
Yeah.
cause some turmoil and chaos and struggle. But I genuinely do try to be a good role model to them and be a safe space for them, for sure.
And that will mean so much to them. I have a stepmom that she's no longer my stepmom, but we are still close. She's 10 years older than me,
Yeah.
and she's a very special person in
Yeah.
my life for sure.
And so, yeah, so there was an age difference between your stepmom and your dad then, because if she's only 10 years older than you, it's kind of this,
That's also always been modeled for me, is like what relationships look like. Is like the man is
yeah,
older. I loved what you just said, because like I made this comment once recently and I heard myself and I was like, not actually, it wasn't that recent, but I was like, felt cringe about it. I was like, I really like to be babied. And I was like, who says that? But the way you just put it,
I love being babied.
nurtured, tended to, that's a much
I
more like,
love,
I was like, that's what I meant when I said, I like, what, and what's wrong with that?
can
You
I
know
tell
what I
you what I
mean?
call this? This is my baba. I'm not kidding. I'm genuinely not kidding. And so, you and I are very similar.
Oh, shit. I'll just put that here.
Shit.
Told you, these are the
I know,
Amazon
I know,
ones.
I know. You and I are very similar in that there is a very hard, tough exterior. And it took a long time for Tony to like break down those walls, because that was what protected me and kept me safe. And now with healing, I've learned like it's okay to be soft. It's okay for somebody to take care of you. It's okay for someone to nurture you. And so I am this bad bitch. But when I get home, I'm like,
Yes.
can you feel my baba, please? Please?
Home
Like,
to be baby.
yeah, I am comfortable in my bonnet, in my like grandma pajamas. He will fill my baba. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, because I feel like for the first time in my life, I've gotten that safety with another man. Growing up, I did not have a present father, and I just did not have a safe adult. And
Yeah.
that's another reason why I want to be that for all of my children and for just people in general. But I now have that. So I've like that when I get home and I feel safe and I feel comfortable, that tough exterior can kind of go away.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, no, like we like hold hands when we like go to bed, because he's genuinely like by the end of the day, and maybe you can relate to this having ADHD. Like sometimes I'm just so overstimulated just because so many different things are happening. It's hard to slow my mind down. He is co-regulation for me.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
so holding his hand, like hugging him, cuddling with him, it is genuinely calming for me.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, you can ask me anything you want.
All right, this is an interview. Do you call him daddy? Because I know, because
Do you want to look at my phone?
is that what it's stored?
It's not daddy.
Zaddy. I love it.
My stepdaughter's cringe.
I was gonna say, well, he has kids, so it's like
Yeah.
easy to fall into that. And like, you grew up in the Midwest or the West, really, but in the South, like couples calling each other, like family units, like calling each other mom and dad, like just like the kids did, was very common.
Yeah.
So I used to joke and be like, I've called all my boyfriends daddy. It sounds really twisted, but it was like when I started getting Pomeranians, because those are not Coco and Chanel. There was Barbie and Buddy before Coco and Chanel. Anyways, it'd be like I'd be like, Daddy's home,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so
I mean, I say that with my son.
I'd
I'm
just be
like, why don't you ask daddy, or let's go ask daddy? Like, I say that.
but you aren't
so
like, Daddy, fill up my water bottle.
I'm like, Zaddy, fill up my water bottle. Come on, Zaddy. No, that's in the. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna stop.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like saying it sounds sexual, but like I would say it like not in a sexual way,
Yeah.
but just in like a
Yeah. Right.
daddy,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
where's
Yeah.
daddy? I look at the dog and be like, where's daddy?
Absolutely. 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 Yes, yes. But he is my daddy and he's my zaddy.
I love it. I mean, is that okay? I don't feel like it's a trauma thing. You know what I mean? I just feel like it's sweet. Like
Well, and
especially when
also,
you say like that's my safe place, that's my family. So like whatever.
and I totally own it because he has been very healing for my trauma because he has been kind of the first safe man that's ever really been in my life.
Yeah.
And so if that's weird, okay, I guess that's weird. I don't know. I'm
It's
kind of used to being weird though. It
no,
is what it is.
I'm asking because I guess
Yeah.
I've been like struggling with like was all of that like a trauma response and should I like disown those parts of me that loved that like wanting to be like nurtured and like doted on in a like really soft way and like
I think that they originate from a trauma response. But for me, it comes from a more like empowered space
yeah,
because I'm in a more healed space. If that
yeah,
makes sense.
it does. And
Yeah.
I like the nuance of that because like I do want a partnership, but I don't want us to both be like you know,
Yeah.
I do want to be in a very feminine energy when I'm with
Yes.
my partner. I think that's
Yes.
important to me.
Yes.
And that's not for everybody. Like I feel like everybody's dynamic is what works for them.
Right.
So I'm glad we talked through that. Thank
Yeah.
you for that.
You're
I
welcome.
needed to
And
like can I still call my future boyfriend's daddy? I
you
guess
can,
I
and here's the thing, it's like you can make your relationship whatever you want it to
Yeah.
be. Like, only you knows what that relationship really consists of. And, there are very few couples who I'm like, wow, I really want to be like that. But there are few that I really like admire or are inspiring to me. And yeah, it's whatever you want to make it.
I agree with that. My friend Cassidy and her husband, because I used to kind of feel like it was taking women back to be like, oh, like masculine and feminine energy, or like, what even is that? And then I think the first time that it was aha for me is her explaining it because she's kind of similar to us in that way. Like at work, she's a boss, she's on top of it, like
Yeah.
she's getting all the things done, she's knowing all the things. And then she's like, when I go travel with my husband, like, I don't even know where we're going. Like, I'm like, what? Huh? And
That's
you
me.
feel her feminine energy, like
Yeah.
the difference when he's around versus not. Like, she's
Yeah.
just like, because she feels safe. And that was so big for me because in a old relationship, I feel safe at this point, like episode 7, that he's not like listening. So I'm not going to get like sued or whatever. But in an old relationship, he would always say, you never let me lead. And I was like,
Oh.
what are you talking about? Like, that's ridiculous. And then when it hit for me and it helped me realize like it wasn't right for me. The relationship wasn't when she said that because I was like, I don't trust you to lead.
I was just going to ask you that. Did you not let him lead because it was not safe? It didn't feel safe enough.
100%.
Yeah. And I've been like that where I've been in relationships where I was really dominant and I still like even though healing for me has been learning to get into a more feminine space and kind of learning that it's okay to be softer and vulnerable, I still also like really love like the strong woman that like built me.
It's nice to be able to like call her up when she's needed.
Yeah.
That's what I was like kind of getting at in my pilot about anger. Like,
Yeah.
I like to be able to feel that strength when I need it.
Yeah.
And I had a really interesting conversation with a woman recently. Actually, we both know her, but I won't say her name just for the fact. But she was like, I don't feel like anger is accessible to me because it's something I repressed for so long. I don't have access to it.
Wow.
I don't even know what that's like because I'm just so intense, you know?
Yeah.
And then I was like, she said it so poignantly. I mean, she was just everything she was saying. And I was like, are there emotions I don't have access to? Because I feel like I have the whole range
Yeah.
access, you
Yeah.
know? Like I can't think of an emotion that I can't like pull up.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, you know, anger covers up
Yeah.
sadness and grief. And
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
that's harder. But now I'll cry.
Yeah, I'm
Just
like that too.
cry
But I
anytime.
do. I have such a love for a just a strong and powerful woman,
Yeah.
because I know probably the things that she maybe had to go through, or the survival skills she had to acquire to become that. And I, I do want like women to also channel their soft, but I don't want that part to ever go away either. Like I
Yeah.
love, like, strong women get shit done.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were we just got back from a trip to Punta Cana,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know where Tony had gone. Tony had gone somewhere off on his own. And so it was just me and my bonus daughters. And it was an all-inclusive resort that we were staying at, and there was a woman who I didn't know, but we were all getting massages on the beach, getting like pedicures on the beach. And we are
Aw.
watching this woman in the water, and she was belligerently drunk, okay? And the waves were really strong and whatever that day. And I watched for a good 2 hours this woman getting in the ocean, and she was with two other men. And getting in the ocean, she was falling, she was swallowing water, she was struggling, and they were just laughing at her. There was one point she fell, and then like someone grabbed her by her hair and like was like pulling her in the ocean. And I didn't
There
even
were no other women with her? Like,
there was one, and they were all drunk, and so they were just like laughing at her, and I'm like, man, like even when I'm drunk, I still like I'm always this like justice seeker. And so like I get protective of even women I don't know if I feel like they're not safe or they're not getting taken care of. And so a lot of times when no one will say something, I am I'll say something. I don't care if
yeah.
100 people are like turning away. I'll be that one person who, if I feel strongly enough in that situation, I'll act on it and I'll do something. I'll say something. So I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm sick of watching this woman struggle. And like the workers were really worried about her safety. And so
I think that at those resorts, they're kind of like trained to be very like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the woman who was giving us a massage, she was telling us a story about like how literally like the other day, like somebody was so drunk and they almost drowned and they had to go and like save them. And then they were like, I don't know what happened. And it's like, well, I do. Maybe you shouldn't have gotten so drunk and gone out in
yeah.
the ocean and try to swim. I don't know. But I didn't even go to the girl. I went straight up to the guys, and one of the guys was like 6'5", 230 pounds. But when I am in that state, I don't
Yeah.
feel fear. Like I'm not scared. I'm not, but I was like, I think you need to get her out of the water right now, because I'm like, it's not safe, and like I'm having a hard time just sitting and trying to relax on the beach, and like at minimum she's gonna get sick from how much just salt water she swallowed.
What did he
And
say?
he diminished it, and he was like, no, I don't, whatever, it's fine, it's fine. And so that's where like
Oh,
you know
God.
what I mean? And I'm like, no. Also the finger pointing. No, I think you need to get her out of the water right now.
Tony, I can just see Tony walking up, seeing you over here like this in the water, being like,
And
oh,
he's like
no.
scared for the man. He's not scared for me. He's scared for the man. He's scared for the 6'5" man. And I'm like, no, I think you need to get her out of the water right now. As a man, you sitting and watching this woman struggle in the ocean, like, I have a problem.
Oh,
And if I have a
wow.
problem, like we're gonna have a problem. Like I'll figure it out. Like I'll get them to like kick you off the beach, but I'm like, I'm not gonna sit here and watch her potentially drown and you laugh. So like
Yeah.
he just quietly got his partner and his friends, and they picked their stuff up and went to the beach, and I'm like, that's right. That's right. And I don't care if people think that's too whatever, but I'm like, I
Well,
am
the fact
never
that even the
going
people
to.
working there were sitting there uncomfortable, like, oh my
Yeah,
God, like I'm
yeah,
concerned.
yeah,
And this is not the first time that they've seen
right,
people. And I'm sure they're like, I know when I've went to resorts like that, like they're like, hey, more drinks. Like
right,
I think that they're kind of told to let people,
right,
like they're not out there like trying to,
right,
intervene
right.
at
But as a
something like that.
woman
Like, because what if they
watching.
went and
Yeah,
complained to the
yeah.
resort about
Right,
it?
right. But as a woman watching another woman struggle, I'm like, I can't do it. I have to step
Yeah.
in. I don't care if no one else is.
Well,
I'm
the
going
fact
to.
that her friend wasn't like, hey, it's probably time for you to like go, let's go
I
take a
know.
nap, or like
I
or
know.
her, if her partner or whatever the
I
dynamic
know.
was.
Yeah. Well,
Jeez.
I told him.
Well, good for you. I love it.
my 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 bonus starters were like, they're like, I'm genuinely, because I don't raise my voice, but like
Hmm.
I just have
You
this
can
like,
feel the energy of
yeah,
seriousness when
I'm not
someone is
fucking
like,
around.
yeah.
I'm not fucking around.
And
So
that level, that's the energy that you were talking about.
yeah,
Because I was thinking about that. I was like, if I were to get like when I like a big three trigger, like when I feel that coming up, like I feel like I could rip a car off the ground and
same.
throw it.
Yeah,
Like that's an energy that you have access to
yeah,
that's really powerful.
yeah. Now I think like there are ways to heal it, hone it in,
It doesn't, it can't
to be
control you,
right,
or
be
else
able to
you're like,
decipher when it's appropriate, when
yeah,
it's not. But I'm like, I love that I've always had this very strong sense of self. And when I feel like very passionate about something, especially when it comes to like, I feel like, again, justice not being handled
I feel like
properly.
I have a strong sense of justice
You
too.
do. You definitely do. Yeah. Yeah, you do for sure. Yeah. No, and I love that. So, like, I want all women to, yes, channel their softness, but I want like them to find their power
Yeah.
too, and their voice and their strength. Like, I want that for all women.
I agree. It's hard to watch people, especially other women, get it be in their own way. And then I have to relate to like, okay, but what did you want to hear? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? There have been different phases of my life where like I didn't want your lecture. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so it's just kind of finding that balance of like staying true to, wanting the best for the people that you love,
Right.
but like also respecting where they are and recognizing people have to come to their
Yeah.
own.
Right. That's something that I've definitely had to work on.
That's hard for me too.
And, in human design, with I'm a projector, and the big thing is like always wait for the invitation. Um, and
Are you a projector?
yeah,
That's like less than like 1% or something like
you're
that.
thinking of a reflector.
Okay, because they're usually like your
Like I know
channel.
one reflector.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Projectors, it's like reflectors, then it's manifestors, then it's projectors. But yeah, it's we do have good insight. We do have like we're if it's like animal kingdom, we're like the birds on the tree branch. We have a different viewpoint than every other animal. And so we have a good eye for things. But sometimes people aren't ready to see that yet. And so to only give that insight and to give that guidance when the invitation is sent out,
Yeah.
which is something that I've really had to learn, because it's like, I have this good advice, but they're not taking it. And it's like, well, they didn't ask for it. So,
And
like,
I'm a fixer. Like I want to fix everybody's
yeah,
problems and like
yeah,
probably at times in a way to avoid my own.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I like it. It sometimes drives Tony or like the people around me crazy, because if I see a problem like with our relationship, with the family dynamic, with my son with school, like I don't like to sit on things. I like to solve it and be very proactive before it turns into a problem. Not everybody operates that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I do like holding people accountable, but I also really hold myself accountable too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think with some like institutions, I hate to say it. I used to say this all the time and I hated saying it, but like it's necessary.
Yeah.
If people, when people like don't play about and they're on it,
Yeah.
they're unfortunately they're gonna, that's gonna yield a better result than
Yeah.
somebody who's checked out in
Yeah.
some circumstances.
Yeah. So I've had to really decipher like what's worth fighting for and what's not. But if it's worth fighting for, I will stay on your neck.
Yeah.
But again, I really do hold myself accountable. Like I hold a very high standard for myself as well. So yeah, I do that with the people I love.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love in like just intensity. You know what I mean, in people.
It used to really bother me because I felt like I was very intimidating, or I made other people feel insecure, or and so it was like with healing, channeling my softness, but then lately it's been like, but a like still love and hold compassion for like that power in you
Yeah.
too. Like they both serve a purpose. Let's blend them both together. So, where before I was like, oh my gosh, just be soft, just be this, just, you know, but it's like, I am that, but I'm also this, and I don't want that to go away. I don't want that strong, like badass bitch to go away either. So, I'm working on owning my bigness.
Yeah. I
So,
love that as
yeah.
a way to think about it. Because like you said, it's kind of like black and white thinking, like you're like, oh, I need to be this way. But it's like, no, but I like some of those intense parts of me.
Yeah.
I've came around to that. I like being intense.
Yeah.
It's like,
I do too.
and I always was like, even like a muddled, like watered down version of it at work was just like, I was known as intense. And I'm like, this is fucking nothing. Like,
Yeah.
I feel so, it's like fully hasn't even sank in yet, but like liberated.
Yeah.
Just being like,
Have you always been told that you're intimidating?
people say that sometimes, and it like puts my guard down when they do. And I appreciate that because I otherwise interpret people's standoffishness as they don't like me. And I
Interesting.
don't be I'm never like, oh, I'm so they're just intimidated. Like
Mm.
that's never what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like something's wrong with me. They don't like me. So when
Ah.
people have been like, hey, I'm glad we had this conversation. Originally I felt like intimidated or whatever. I'm like, that like warms my heart because now I know I was wrong in thinking you just like hated me.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've always been told that and I'm like, "Really? Like why? What happened? I don't know." Like like we've been I thought we were getting along, but I think it's just a big presence and very
Mhm.
passionate about what you believe and maybe opinionated and um but I also don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
No. In fact,
Like
I've gotten to a point where I'm kind of like bored when people are not that way. I'm like, God, care about something.
I'm like, I really gravitate towards strong women and big personalities. Like, I
Yeah.
really do. Or like a woman who's like been through some shit. I'm like, yes, like, let me hear your
Yeah.
story. I want to hear like what the fuck you've gone through. Like, I find it fascinating. Like, why are you that way?
I agree. Then I have to like check myself because I'm like, ooh, let me solve all your problems. And this will be a great break from solving all my problems.
Oh, yeah. 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 I probably do that a little bit too. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Super ADHD. I want to talk about like the Marshall Islands. Like, I want to talk about your origin story.
Yeah, yeah. So, my mom is white. She grew up in Iowa and then she joined the Peace Corps and she got located to the Marshall Islands, which is, my dad was Marshallese. Um, I don't know if people know much about the history of the Marshall Islands, but, um, in the 40s and 50s, it was for, I think, 11 or 12 years. The US did nuclear testing on our island, and they did it on the atoll called Bikini. And
Like SpongeBob, you said.
yeah, so the show SpongeBob SquarePants is in Bikini Atoll, and it's based on the mutated sea life in the Marshall Islands,
Which is
which
so
most people
twisted.
don't know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made people very sick, gave them cancer. They would have babies that they called them like jellyfish babies, where it would just be like translucent skin, no bones. Um, but they did it on purpose to test how humans would react to that level of radiation. And they didn't tell natives either. So, like a lot of natives, I mean, this was the 40s and 50s, they're very indigenous at that time. And they just saw like white particles falling from the sky. They thought it was snow because they didn't know any different. And they were taking it and they were like rubbing it on their skin, putting it in their mouth. Obviously, made them, you know,
Sick.
sick. Yeah. So, but yeah, my dad was a native. Talking about like my powerful like personality is I get that from my mom and I get that from my dad. Um, he was a spearfisher, like a free diver.
Oh, wow.
And I like people make fun of me because I tell this story, but I always like my rebuttal back to that is, well, my dad wasn't present in my life. I moved to the States when I was 4. So for me, it's the only story I have, and it's a badass story. So I'm going to continue to tell it.
Yeah.
But he was spearfishing, and he got bit by a shark, and he went to the hospital. He ended up being fine. When he got back, or before he went to the hospital, he marked the shark, and when he got out of the hospital, he went straight to the water.
He's gonna find that motherfucking
Found that
shark.
motherfucker and killed it. And so I'm like, I mean, I was destined.
Wow.
You know? And so, but we moved to the States when I was about 4. My dad struggled with addiction. And there was just...
Did he come? He didn't come here with you.
He didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my
once
parents split up.
when you left when you were 4, it was like he stayed there, and that's
Yeah.
a what 3-day plane ride. I mean, it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
somewhere you could like go visit.
Yeah. No, you got to fly to Hawaii, and then it's like another 7 or 8 hours to the Marshall Islands. So they're 26 hours ahead of us. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it's really not even feasible to like
No, it's...
communicate. It really, I mean, and especially at that.
Yeah. So, I got split up from my dad, and I got split up from some of like my siblings. So,
And your culture.
my culture.
I mean, 4 years of like development is significant. And
Yeah.
even if you hadn't spent that time there, it's still your culture, and there's still a feeling of like isolation and disconnect in not having like
Yeah,
and being
absolutely.
in a totally different culture.
Yeah, when I moved to the States, like my English was not great because we have our own language, and we have our own culture.
And there was so many, the language, the best time to learn is then because
Yeah.
of how the receptors are firing at that time.
Yeah. So, it's like I moved to the States, and then that whole entire part of my life just didn't exist anymore. So, like,
You
my
said there were
dad, my
siblings
culture.
that stayed there. It was your dad's kids that weren't your mom's.
Yeah.
So how many of you came here?
So, my mom was a single mom of 6 children.
Jesus.
She did bond with some of his children, and she adopted them.
Took them with her.
Yeah, and she was a social worker, so she didn't, make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And but she always really provided for us. But I grew up with a mom who was tough.
Yeah.
And so I got that toughness from her too, because she didn't have help, and she didn't have help from a spouse, or she didn't have help from, her parents, or so she really like struggled and had to work really, really hard. So there's like this meme where it's like, I've never seen like a relaxed woman.
Yeah.
And like, I feel that very, very deeply, because she oftentimes was working 2 or 3 jobs to make sure we had the things that we needed. And so, although I didn't get the things that I felt like I needed from my mother and my father, and that's okay to feel that, I also have an understanding of like, she could only do so much being alone and doing it alone. Like,
but as a kid,
I think
you don't know that.
Right.
So you internalize all and that's what's crazy to me too. I see why you like The Heroine's Journey, the book. It's really good.
Yeah, it's so good.
About like picking up as a kid on the energy of the stress.
Yeah.
The like, how could she be in her feminine energy if she has to be both parents to 6 kids?
Yeah.
And she's the provider. She like, when is there time for that? Let alone herself.
I think it's impossible for a single mother to be like truly in like her feminine energy, like empowered feminine energy, because how can she?
How could you?
She's wearing way too many hats, and so I really feel for her. But, I grew up not really liking men, not really trusting men, not really feeling safe with a man, because I didn't really have it ever modeled for me.
Just so she didn't date. When would she have had time to date?
No, not really.
Were there what did she tell you? Like, you're 4 when you leave. So as you get older, what was the story that was told to you about why she left?
So that's the other thing is I feel, and there's a lot of things that I don't remember, so I could be wrong
Yeah.
about a lot of things, but I did not grow up talking with my family about things that were happening.
There wasn't a culture of question asking like that.
And conversation and communication and like so I had a cousin recently tell me that when I was 4 and I moved here, she remembers me talking about like how much I miss my dad and how much I hated the American bananas.
I wonder what's so different.
I think in the Marshall Islands they were sweeter, and probably because I don't know.
Everything else you ate
It's like
impacted your
natural.
palate
Yeah,
also.
yeah, yeah. So and that made it's weird because when she told me that made me really sad because I was like, oh, like I just think about like 4-year-old little me who had no idea what was happening, and I don't know how it was explained to me, but at the end of the day, regardless of how it was explained to me, like I had my dad and then I just didn't.
Then it just
And then we
wasn't there.
just like I do know like in my teenage years, like it's just something we didn't ever talk about. So, um and it was hard too because I grew up with I was the youngest, or so I thought, but I was the youngest, and I had an older sibling who was incredibly abusive. And so just all of those things, the dad, the mom, the not talking, um also I always felt like I had this big personality that wasn't liked by other people
Yeah.
because it always felt like it was too much for them, too dramatic, too loud, too this, too that. I got very angry, very, very angry. So you put in, I'm now in high school or I'm in college, you incorporate alcohol into the mix. I was a fighter. I was just, I was a fighter, and I loved to like pick fights with men.
It sounded like you got a little taste of that on your vacation. You were
I
like,
know.
you know what, it's been
I
on.
know, I
Looking over there.
know. Watching your girl just drown almost.
But now you only fight for good.
Yes, yes. And I learned like, okay, I'm triggered. And I sat there for a long time. Okay, I'm really triggered that like she's just like struggling. Like sit with it for a little bit and decide what you're going to do. Where before I'm like angry,
Go.
blackout, see red, go. And like there was just I was very impulsive. Where now I've like been like, okay, like what are you feeling? Where do you feel it in your body? Like sit with it for a second and then decide what you're going to do. Like are you going to act on it? Like but make it be a very conscious, thought out decision. Where before it was just like I'm pissed, I'm going to cut you.
Yeah. That's really good advice to say, like, sit with it and determine, like, I know I'm triggered. I'm triggered right
And
now.
why am I
But does
triggered?
that, and why? But does that mean it's not, that doesn't mean like there's never a time for intervention. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that there's not still an injustice happening.
Right.
This is really getting to me because I'm triggered.
Yeah.
I had a therapist tell me one time, I'm like, is every female bartender I meet, are they just all a bitch? Like, or at some point it's got to be me, right? Like, they can't
Right.
all be a bitch. And she was
Right.
like, I think two things can be true at once.
Yeah.
They're probably like tired, overworked, like stressed, like being short with you. You internalize the shortness.
Right.
And you don't like that.
Right. Right.
So it's like that, yes, I'm triggered, but yes, something wrong is going on.
Right.
Okay, when I calm down, like, what should I do?
Right. 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 Where before, yeah, I didn't have that. I would just like black out and see red, and I wanted to fight. But I also,
Did you ever get your ass beat?
girl, no, I just beat ass.
You channeled all that rage,
Yeah.
and you were like,
Yeah, no, I've like broken noses. Like like there's something deep in there. I don't know what.
It's a lot to channel.
And people like Leah, my co-host, she always talks about Callie.
Mm-hmm. The goddess.
Yes. I'm like, girl, Callie's been in here for a minute. Like, she'll crack a skull to protect somebody she loves and cares about, or she sees like injustice happening. I've just had to learn to like heal that part. But I don't even know where we're at. But
I got you were like I wanted to fight because
yeah,
that was a release.
it was.
Yeah.
It was. And also, you know, there's another factor too, like seeing, and again, I don't remember a lot of it, but I think seeing the things that happened between my mom and my dad, having an abusive sibling in my home and nothing ever really happening, um, it it really affected me to the point where I never wanted to be the victim of it ever again.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to like, you're not even going to start with me because you're too scared to.
Yeah.
And that was a protective mechanism. And I have, like, there's been a lot of guilt and shame that has come with that. Like, you projected on a lot of people who didn't deserve it, or it didn't need to get to that point. But I've also learned to have a lot of compassion and love, because again, it's like, if you don't feel protected, like, I wanted to make it so like no one could mess with me.
Yeah.
And no one could hurt me, because I knew what it felt like to be hurt, and I also knew what it felt like to watch other people be hurt, and I just had to sit there and just watch it. So
I think that's interesting how people like deal with that differently, because helplessness it's almost like when you have to endure abuse and you're helpless and you can't fight back.
yeah.
Like I feel the same, like it just the anger and the rage and
Yeah.
the reactions that I couldn't make stack.
Yeah.
Stack.
And anger is powerful.
It's a lot of stuff that was stacking.
Yeah, like it's very powerful.
Yeah.
And and but yeah, I think about like young Christina. I'm like, oh my gosh, you feral little fucker.
Alcohol was not
Yeah.
my friend either.
Yeah, and that's another reason too why I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
Like I've found so many other things that serve me so much better, and I feel like, and probably this conversation does not make it seem that way, but I feel like when I am safe, I am so chill and goofy and silly and funny, and for such a long time people didn't get to see that part of me because I didn't feel safe enough. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
they must really like you. They've never cared enough to like try to leave the room when I was recording before.
Well, they don't seem like they like me. What the fuck is up with that? Usually dogs love me.
God, that sounded like
freaking Chanel.
Threw a little...
Wait, is it Chanel or Coco?
It's probably Coco, but that was just an intense like slam against the thing.
Yeah.
I totally see that in you, and maybe it's our past life connection.
Can you talk about that?
Yes. Have you done your Akashic reading
No,
yet?
I need to, and I want to so bad.
I've had another one sort of since then, and it was, I don't even know. Anyways,
you didn't like it?
No, I liked it, but it was like what she said was, it was a lot for me to like. But the first one, it was so interesting because he was like, I was like, is there anyone from my past life that is like in my current life? And he was like, someone named Christina. And I was like, Christine? He was like, yeah. He was like, you know her from a past life. And I'm like, he's like, is she like important to you? I'm like, she's played a pretty big role lately. Yeah. And so it was just so funny that you're the kind of person that I could text and be like, oh yeah, by the way, because like, I mean, we've kind of talked about, you know, depending on who you're talking to, people are like, what the
fuck are you talking about? Yeah. Yeah. No,
the
way I relate to that. But I feel like if like that's true, I feel like we were like fucking warriors. Like it was like during a time of like a matriarchal society, and we like fucked shit up.
Maybe it was in a different timeline where that was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like an alternate universe.
But I'm here for that because I feel like we could do some fucking damage.
I really love that. That's great.
Because you have kind of like that same, like, there's like a little like feral Yeah, like
definitely.
badass energy in
You know
there.
what's crazy, and we talked about this on recording number one, is that I have not been in a fight. The way
I
I've
think
like
that's
gotten
crazy.
drunk and ran my mouth, and I mean like mean, just rage, and like I've had multiple friends be like, "You are gonna get us beat the fuck up,
Yeah.
like stop."
Yeah.
Is wild that nobody's ever punched me in my face. In fact, my ex-boyfriend used to say that. He'd be like, "Nobody's ever punched you in your fucking face and it shows," which he didn't. I'm not condoning that behavior, but honestly, he had a point.
Well, and I'm thinking like if we met at a bar in that feral state, unhealed, wounded versions of ourselves, like would we have been buddy buddy or would I've been like,
Oh, I would have sensed that you were a fighter and not. I know when I'm at like when somebody
yeah,
gonna whoop my ass talking shit. I think there's a level of like I had to have been able to sense the energy of no, they will literally punch you in your fucking face.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's another thing he used to say. He'd be like I'd start running my mouth, we'd be arguing, and he'd be like, "Can you fight me? Can you fight me?" Like that was we had a real healthy relationship.
Oh my God. Well, like if you ever want to learn how to fight, I'll teach
You
you.
teach me?
Oh my girl, I used to own a boxing
I
gym.
hope I don't need it, but I mean, I feel like I'd like to have that
I
skill.
think it's just a good skill set to
Absolutely.
have.
Like self defense. I think
And
it
you're
would be a
right,
good
people feed
somatic
off
release
that
too.
like like whether it's conscious or unconscious know that kind of energy and they're going to be less likely to mess with you because they're like that's not somebody I want to like go down that road with. But I
It's
always want women to be able to defend themselves.
it's funny because there have been people who have said before, like, you seem like you don't like, especially like in the work or whatever, like you seem like you don't play games. Like, so I think I do put off a strong energy, but it's also
Definitely.
that if I really needed to channel all of my rage, you know what I mean? I think it could do damage, but I've never definitely I will say because I don't have the fighting skills, I've never definitely never been matched to like take on a man. Like that's one thing that I'm like cuz and that's so like when I feel like I would be winning the argument and he'd be that's what he'd say. He'd say, "Can you whoop my ass? Can you whoop my ass?" Period. If the answer is no, the end of the conversation.
Oh my gosh.
No, but we talked about that
In
last
my head I'd be like I'm going to
Yes.
try.
Yes.
So keep pushing.
Actually, bro,
There
you
was
ain't even that tall.
there was so there's one guy I dated before I met Tony and we had gone to his house or sorry, we had gone to his brother's house and all of his friends and his brother's girlfriend were there and I'd met all of his friends for the first time. And he got really drunk and he started like messing with me, like jokingly, like
Yeah.
pushing me and all this stuff. And I'm like,
The fingers.
the two fingers. I'm like, you keep doing that. I'm gonna defend myself back. And it's not gonna be pretty. And he's like, oh, like pushing me, whatever. And I just like swiftly turned around and went behind him and I literally put him in a chokehold. And he had to tap out in front of his friends
Oh
and his
my
family.
god.
And he was like beat ready, couldn't breathe, and like he finally tapped out and he's like, oh, like he got so mad. And they were like, dude, your girlfriend just choked you out. You had to like literally tap out. And I'm like, I told you. And he's like, so then he was like so pissed at me that entire night. And we get back to his house and he's like, I can't believe you like choked me out in front of all my friends and blah, blah. And I'm like, you started it. Like you started it. I know you're joking around. I was joking around too, but like you got choked out.
You were like play fighting with me, and so
Right.
like, okay, I'm gonna play. I'm
Fight
like,
with you back, but I'm gonna choke you out. Yeah, you're gonna have to tap out. So and so then he like was getting mad again, and then so he started to wrestle with me again, but it was just him and I at his house. Choked him out again. I was like, bro. He broke up with me like pretty quickly after that.
oh god.
But now I think I'm
Obviously,
like,
it
you're
worked
just
out.
yeah, you're just so triggered that I choked you out twice, but that's fine.
Did he like try to start learning? Was he like, how do you do that after that? Like, show me
No,
how to do that.
but it was because I was like a woman and a strong woman. It was too intimidating for him. So I
Yeah.
just needed to be with a man who I felt safe enough to let my guard down and who also wasn't like threatened by my strength.
Yeah, definitely. And
So,
because your own like wounded like masculine, if your masculinity is so fragile,
right,
yeah, I agree
right.
with that.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I like I grew up with an older brother who used to wrestle the crap out of me and teach me how to I'm like I will used to talk shit, but I'm like I can kind of back it up too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that so much. I wish I had that so that when he was like, "Can you whoop my ass?" that I could be like, "You know what? Yeah, actually, I fucking can."
I can help you.
I can't tell you how many times he
We're gonna
said
do a
that.
mitt work
Yeah, I need to
session.
know.
I'm gonna show
I
you
would
how to
I would
box.
love that. I also feel like because I wanted to go to the rage room, so I just feel like it would be a good
So
no.
good.
Yeah, good.
Well, we should do that
I
together.
would love that.
I have never done that, but I think I could do
I've
some
been wanting to
major
go. I feel
damage.
like it would just be a good release of a lot of energy.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
we'll have
want
a
to.
little girl date.
Can we talk about how Kai came into your life? Like,
Yeah.
I think that story is so beautiful on so many levels, but I also think it illustrates like just how like you talk about your mom adopting some of your siblings and bringing them here. She changed their life
Yeah.
because I don't even who knows what things were like then. Even now,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of opportunity there for the people.
Yeah, and my mom was saying to me the other day that she would sometimes when we were still in the island, she would have to travel for work, and she would worry about like if something happened, like if she got in a plane crash or something bad were to happen, like what would happen to us. And so another thing too is I think that if I would have stayed in the Marshall Islands, I would not have the strength that I have now. I just
Yeah.
don't think that. I think a lot of women are incredibly submissive. And so I think that's another thing that kind
You
of
would have
lights
been
a fire under my
socialized.
ass to not be that way and to not just, have a man just tell me what to do and how to be and me be at home with the children, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's just like the circumstances under that is, in my opinion, not what I want.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, my son Kai, he just turned 5. He's literally the best. He also was the person who, when he came into my life, I started to get triggered about a lot of things, and I used to feel bad that I felt triggered, uh, but now I'm like it forced me to heal, and it forced me to like address those wounds.
Yeah.
Um,
I bet.
yeah, just patience and giving. I think it's very hard as a parent to it can be um to give your child the things that you never got to have. And I loved giving those things to him, but there was like, but I didn't get it. But I didn't get to have this. I didn't get to have a mom and dad. I didn't get to have this patience. I didn't get to have this love. So, like, again, it's like, it's not that black and white way of thinking. Like, multiple things can exist at the same time. That I am so lucky to have him in my life, and I get to do these things, and I get to be the mom that, like, I want to be. But there's still this, like, very deep sadness and grief that I also didn't get those things. And I see him, as a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, being so big and loud and showing up in a certain way and just being his most authentic self and just feeling sadness that I didn't
Yeah.
have that same experience and I was just a little kid.
I love that you just gave voice to that because I think that's probably something that a lot of women and men too have felt
Yeah.
and they just push it away
Yeah.
because it's a shameful thought, but it's still showing
Yeah.
up in the way they parent. It's
Yeah.
like this underlying resentment
Yeah.
towards their kids, and there's so much I've seen of that. I mean, I can think of like example, especially with like dads, and like if their dad was really hard on them,
Yeah.
like why am I going to be soft with you? Like this is how you be a father. Like
Yeah.
there's so many layers to that. I remember like feeling with like dating older guys that had kids. I loved their kids, but I was also when I look back resentful on a level sometimes when they were around because that's my attention.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so I even
It's an
think
adjustment
like
for
a
sure.
level of like yeah of I'm that piece of like I needed so much
Yeah.
like I needed so much nurturing Like, so to have to share that with another person, even if
Yeah.
it's someone that I love very much, I can see that being
Yeah.
like a
Yeah,
challenge.
and I had those, and it wasn't like a resentment towards them. It was like a sadness for myself.
Yeah.
Like I really just like pitied myself, where now I'm like,
So it just brought up those emotions because you were like, wow, this is what it should have been like.
yeah, I didn't
That
I
makes
didn't
sense.
I didn't get that. But so when Tony and I, we got pregnant. I don't know if I ever told you that.
I'm remembering it now because
Okay.
I thought it was so significant.
Yeah, so we got pregnant. Wasn't planned, but we were very excited. We had heard the heartbeat and everything, and we had one more appointment before we were gonna like start to tell people. And then at that appointment, there wasn't a heartbeat anymore, and um, definitely went through like a pretty deep depression
Yeah.
during that time, especially with having bonus kids and knowing that like my partner had a family and then we were on our way to have a family, and then that I felt like it got stripped from me. Um so
Do you know what happened at all? Or just
I mean,
one
it
of
was
those?
just, yeah, I mean the doctor was very at and that's the other thing too that I really want to stress with adoption is I feel like a lot of people make assumptions that like there's something wrong with the woman, that's why that they adopted, and like I hate that kind of thought.
Yeah.
Um and just assumption about women and their bodies and fertility and all of that. But yeah, no, she was like, I think you guys could totally try again. Like the labs were normal. I think it was just a miscarriage, and those happen sometimes and whatnot. But
Well, you
anyways,
didn't adopt. I mean, there was a significance behind, you know what I
yeah,
mean? It wasn't like
absolutely.
you were even looking to
No,
adopt.
no, not at all. Yeah. And so a few months later, my aunt, who I hadn't seen since I was 4, from the Marshall Islands, came to Louisville. She's a lawyer in the Marshall Islands, and she came to Louisville for like a conference. And someone was like, Christine lives in Louisville, right? And she's like, oh wow, okay. So
Oh,
she
that's
ended up
great.
like staying with us, and it was really nice to like connect with like that Marshall East side again. And I had told her about the miscarriage. So then she goes back to the Marshall Islands. She tells some, other people, and I won't say who, but I get a Facebook message from somebody saying that someone else in my family had a child, and that this child was 2 months and he needed a home, and if we would be interested in adopting him. And of course, I immediately was like, absolutely. And I remember texting, I was working, and I texted Tony, I'm like, guess what? I sent him a screenshot. I was like, so were you
You
adopting
have
a
a
baby? And he's
baby.
like, okay, like
Hang
let's
on.
like, can we talk about this in person? That's like the impulsivity of me.
Yeah, I
But
get that.
yeah, we ended up having Kai come into our lives, and
So freaking
when
cute.
he came to Louisville, it was literally like on my due date.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, talk about, I always mess this word up, synchronicity
Yeah.
of the universe.
Yeah.
Like, it just feels like everything was like, what are the odds that your aunt from the Marshall Islands came to Louisville for a
Yeah.
lawyer conference?
I know. I know.
Like, that's the whole thing
I
is
know.
crazy.
I know. And so he genuinely was meant to be in my life, because of him, I have done so much work on myself, because um in past relationships, like the other person was always the problem. They were always the one who cheated or, lied or whatever. With Tony and with Kai, I've realized, like with Tony, I was like, okay, like he's not lying, he's not cheating, he's like such a solid, like safe man. Like you need to change. And then when Kai came into my life, it's like you still have like these child wounds that you haven't really touched, and you need to change to show up best for him. Because I knew like I knew I was getting triggered about things, and I knew I was like, again, having that like just really deep grief and pity for myself of like the things that I didn't get to have. And but I had, again, like I stay on my own neck too. Like, I'm like, okay, you need to work on this. And so, long story long, but I had a gym at the time. I ended up closing the gym because I was getting sick. I had a UTI for a solid year and a half. And I was getting rashes all over my body, and it was due to chronic stress because
I
I
was gonna say, I
wasn't,
feel like that's like your root chakra.
yeah, I wasn't taking care of me,
Yeah.
and my family the way that I wanted to, and it was really like weighing heavy on me. And I think it was about a month later, Leah, who is my co-host, we met up for lunch, and I saw her, and I was just like, yeah, "You look so good," and I'm like, not just from like like surface level aesthetic purpose, which you look wonderful, but I was like, there's like this inner glow to you, and your energy, like there's just something different about you. I don't know what it
I
is.
love this story.
And she was like, mushrooms, and I'm like, bitch, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I've only like ever like messed with cannabis
Mm-hmm.
because drugs are bad,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, yeah, it like really helped me with my depression. It helped me heal my trauma. It's helped my husband like stay sober and understand like why he drank in the first place. And I was like, holy shit. And I'm somebody who, if it's a modality that somebody I know and I trust and they've used it and it worked for them, like I will jump all in. I will
Yeah.
do anything to heal, to evolve, to show up better for my family, for myself. Like I will try anything if I think it's going to like genuinely help me and the people around me.
I read something that said that like some people's nervous systems are geared for intensity, and that makes some of like plant medicine experiences a little easier for them to like ride the wave of. And I felt that because I feel like
Yeah.
just that, and I have an intent, my nervous system is
Yeah.
like used to intensity, so
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
fuck it, I'll do it.
I kind of had that mindset of like, what's the worst that can happen? If it
Why
doesn't
not?
work, it doesn't work. But I've
Yeah,
already been through what I feel like was hell.
yeah,
So it can't be any worse than that, right?
exactly.
Um,
What's worse? Like you always say, pick your hard.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everyday life is hard because of that, like small, low grade way, and sometimes high grade way that all that stuck stuff is impacting you.
Yeah.
So, like, to be able to just have something so powerful, it can bring it all up to the surface. And to what you described to me sounded like an exorcism, have a literal exorcism of it. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And what's the saying where it's like when the the unfamiliarity of like, oh God, I'm gonna butcher this, but it's like when you would rather do something that you don't know that is uncomfortable,
The discomfort of the unknown versus the,
like familiarity that you like
yeah,
you're staying
the
in.
hell that you know versus the hell that you don't know,
Right.
or the
Yeah.
that I still messed it up, but
Right. Do you know
I
what
know
I'm
what you're
saying?
talking about.
Okay. Yeah, we butchered that, but that's fine. um but
The devil that I know, that's one version of it. Damn
yeah,
it, that
maybe.
always bugs me
I'm
too.
sure I'll think of it in a second. But for me, like a lot of times when I talk to people about mushrooms, they're like, "Oh, I could never do that." And I'm like, I so openly did that because I saw it as a potential solution for my own suffering.
Yeah,
And I'll
exactly.
take that like unfamiliarity over my own suffering any day. If it's going to bring me more peace and bring others around me more peace, sign me the fuck up.
Agreed.
So, yeah, like a few weeks later, I did my first mushroom journey, a heroic dose, and it was like away from like my family and all of that. It was the most profound experience of my life. And it was just the first thing, and this medicine is so life-changing if you are willing to change your life. I
Yeah.
like cannot stress that enough. And so I was willing to do whatever to change my life, but it was just the thing that like clicked for me.
Yeah, you were
And
already doing work, and it was like what the catalyst. It was like what you needed to like help all of that really embody it.
Yeah, and I feel like with talk therapy, I think talk therapy is a step. It's a good like initial thing. It's a good initial tool, but so often we intellectualize our
Yeah.
trauma and we know why we did the things that we did. I could go on all day about like why I did this and that. Until I like really learned to like embody healing, I didn't really heal that much.
Yeah.
So whereas with the mushrooms, I feel like you know, I used to own a gym, so I used to always post about like love yourself and love the body
But
you're
what the
in.
fuck does that
And
mean?
I knew that. Like I knew that what that meant and I believed it and I like where with this mushroom journey, it was like the first time I actually felt like an authentic like genuine love for myself. Like I actually embodied it. And I was like, "Oh, that's what that feels like."
That is so funny that you said that because what pushed me over the edge was an interview with Huberman and oh gosh, I don't even know, maybe I don't even know who it was, but it was on Huberman about mushrooms and it said that what it can do for you like is it can take the theoretical to the obtainable and no one can take that for you. So
Yeah.
like if you are like constantly living in fear and on mushrooms in that state, you feel your brain can feel what it's like to not feel that fear.
Yeah.
It's no longer a theoretical idea of, oh, it'd be nice to not be afraid.
Yeah.
My brain knows that's actually obtainable or attainable. And so that is a feeling that can never be taken from me and it completely changes the work that you do after that. So what you just said about like feeling the love for yourself amidst, all the guilt
Right.
and the shame and all the other shit pulled back and to feel that now that's like creates a new like neural circuit in
Yeah.
your
Oh
brain.
my gosh. And like I feel like it took out all the noise. And then it helped me remember like who the fuck I am
Yeah.
and like what the fuck I meant to do. And it was incredibly powerful. And you know, over the course of a year, Tony saw me change. And then a year later he was like, I think I'm going to do it too.
I love that story
And
too.
and
That he
he
watched you change and he
right.
was like,
Cuz I didn't just talk about it. I was about it. Like
yeah,
I modeled it. And like cuz it's like he knows the ugly Christine, the like deep dark parts of me, the things that like I don't want to show other people. But he saw me transform and he saw me heal from a lot of things that have obviously deeply impacted me for my entire life.
I
And
love so much that you were in a relationship and then after several journeys and several like huge changes that instead of like growing apart or being like, oh, this isn't that you all like were able to evolve together.
yeah, yeah.
I think that's really powerful.
And yeah, and it's really hard if you do this because you can't unsee the things that you see, but if you have a partner who's not willing to also be on that journey with you because it's and I'm not saying this in a condescending way, but it's like I started to get to a point where I was like I feel like I'm like elevating and it's not like an I'm better than you type of way, but I feel like I'm reaching this like more healed state of
Yeah.
myself. And I want to be around people who are willing to evolve with me and come up here with me. I don't,
Otherwise, you can't relate.
right. Yeah, there's just such a different energy and like there's a misalignment there. And so, um, I think we have the type of relationship where he's going to evolve with me and I'm going to evolve with him because like we're going to grow together and we're going to grow old together and we're going to evolve together and like it's a true partnership. And but yeah, it was I sat with him for his journey and it was wonderful because he lost both of his parents. His parents were both really young when they passed and his mom had Huntington's disease and got it really, really early and suffered like the last decade really suffered, like was in a nursing home the last decade of her life. And so I think when she passed, it was like, I've watched her suffer for so long. I'm just going to like tie this up in a bow, push it down because there's nothing I can do about it now. Where in his mushroom experience, he got to reconnect with his mom, and like he realized like she's just not like, even though her human life is done, like she's still out there in the universe and she's still like watching over us and she's still here. And so he like, it was, he was somebody who was agnostic.
Yeah.
His mom had some religious trauma. His mom didn't want to like project it onto him, like the stuff that she had to experience with religion. And so I think because the people in his life that were really religious were incredibly like abusive and toxic, he was just like, I don't know what to believe, but like this ain't it.
Yeah.
Where this journey, like he had a whole ass spiritual experience, and I feel like it like gave him like some faith.
Yes.
It may look
It
different
theoretical goes
than our American Christianity, but like he believes in God, in the universe.
the oneness.
It just
the
it just may
spiritual
not look
piece.
like what.
I like spirituality to describe that better.
Yeah, cuz I think a lot of times like religion, a lot of things are outside of yourself.
Yeah. Well,
Because people
it's a
say like,
socially constructed. It's a set of norms. I feel like I have a lot of religious trauma too, and I still feel the cringe
yeah,
when people talk about religion or
yeah,
Christianity or all that shit.
yeah.
I'm just like, ugh.
But I feel like spirituality, it's like in you.
Yeah.
So it's like you have the power. Whereas sometimes with like when I hear people talk about religion, I was like, you're making it sound like you're powerless, but you're
That's so
not,
well
because
put.
it's like, oh, I'm having this really hard time. I'm going through this awful thing with my partner or with my friend or whatever it is. And so I'm just going to let go and let God. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Like let go, and like you're giving your power away, and then also you're just suppressing.
Yeah.
Whereas like spirituality, it's like, no, I'm gonna
It's
like,
almost like an
I'm gonna,
avoidant like way to be like, oh well, God's plan. Like, yeah, there is a greater plan, and like but then that goes back to that nuance of sometimes people just use that to be
yeah,
like, I don't have to do anything.
yeah, it's like this avoidant. It's like when people like, oh, my mom's this, my mom's that. Well, that's just how she is, so I'm just gonna push it down, or I'm just gonna accept it. I'm like, how's that working out for
Yeah.
you? I just, for me, I can't live that way. I wanna face it, even if it's hard. But I think we're so conditioned to not feel things. And so when I bring up like, oh yeah, I did this journey and I went through like hundreds of years of generational trauma, to then realize like all of this anger that I've been holding on to my entire life, it was never mine to carry in the first place. And people are like, I could never do that. And I'm like, I'm so willing to do that because it's just feelings.
I love that story too because and you showed me the photo. I mean, you showed me a photo of sweat beads that were like built up on your arms and legs. Like I've never seen sweat beads like that in my life.
We should share that photo.
I was gonna just ask you, but I was
Yeah,
gonna wait until we
totally.
were off the camera.
Yeah, I
Is
would
that okay? I
absolutely.
feel like it's just a really powerful thing to like, cause you even like when you told me that, like for you to show me the photo, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And it's funny because like I decided to do a journey outside. I don't know, I just wanted to be able to like watch the trees and like listen to the wind. I know I sound like a
No, no,
fucking
no,
crazy person
no.
when I say
I'm with
that.
you.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, will watch the trees move, and I'm
Yeah.
like some. I'll catch myself around my friends, like, and I'll be like, oh, there's a lot of good energy around here for the trees, and they're like, this fucking bitch.
I know. Well, and so like usually when you do like a heroic journey, you're like in your bed or your couch, you're like you lay back in an eye mask, you go back into your subconscious. This time I didn't want music. I just wanted to be out in nature. And Tony came out and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine, but I would like to be alone because I'm talking to the trees."
Go away.
Go away. But like he was genuinely worried about me because I was
Yeah.
like obviously crying, and I was going through a lot. I was experiencing a lot of ancestral trauma of like childbirth, like abuse, rape. Like it was very, very intense and incredibly challenging. And a lot of people like they shudder because they're like, oh my gosh. But Tony would come out and I would say, like, this is the hardest journey I've ever done, but I'm okay. I'm gonna get through this. Like, I'm meant to see this for whatever reason.
Can I ask you something like to unpack that a little bit more? So like you were feeling the somatic feelings that had been passed down. So you were somatically like feeling that pain in your body that had been stored and passed down, and also at your brain during this, which help you sort of build the context. Is it making associations between those events and like things that associated with that for you to kind of see? Like someone who hadn't had a journey like that, that sounds really strange too.
Yes. And by the way, this wasn't like my first journey. So
Yeah,
I
obviously.
felt better and I feel like that's
I think I believe it wouldn't have happened if you weren't ready for it.
and I think that's kind of what the medicine does is like, okay, you're ready for another layer. Let's just
Yeah.
go in there.
Huh,
But
yeah.
it was in the beginning, it was a little confusing because at first, because I was like, this didn't
Yeah.
happen to me. So I don't know where this is coming from. And then, like, a common theme for my last few journeys have been my ancestors showing up and like giving me a message. And that was the first journey that I realized, oh, this is, these are my ancestors, like, trying to like communicate and like teach me a lesson in this moment. And what's crazy is we have a Great Pyrenees dog, and he is the biggest wussy ever. He like gets really bad anxiety and panic attacks and gets stressed out during storms and is very he's God bless him. Like I've even googled like can you give dogs mushrooms to help with their anxiety, which by the way you can't. Um and for whatever reason that day he was so calm. He like Tony would come out and say, you know, do you need me? And I'd say, no, I have Drogo with me.
I
He's
love that
like
that's the name of the dog.
I know he was by my side the entire time. He didn't bark, he didn't whine, and he's never like that. He's never like even when he like moves his head, it's like this. Um, but he was so like safe and stable for me in that journey. And like I can't help, and I know this sounds crazy and woo woo, and that's fine because I know I'm weird, but I can't help but like think that like it wasn't him. It
Yeah.
was like
Like someone like he was channeling someone to be what you needed.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I believe that.
yeah,
I
because
mean, I think
he
animals
was
are able to do that.
yeah, and he was a very calming like presence for me in that moment, and for whatever reason we just gravitated to each other, and I knew that he was like going to keep me safe and he was going to keep me calm.
I'm reading this book that's really interesting about animals and like their connection to all
Yeah,
of it. Like supposedly they can see
yeah,
you when you're not alone. Like they can see things.
yeah,
Like if you see a cat or a dog staring off, like they might be looking at like a family member or someone or a guide or someone that's like watching over you. Like
yeah.
that's
I'm the chick now who like once I was on MDMA and like a lunar moth came on me and I was like, "Hi, Dad. So good to reconnect." Like that's the weirdo I've turned into.
no,
Which
I
I'm
get
like,
it.
you know what? If that delusional way of thinking is helping me heal, then
It doesn't,
so
the
be
more
it.
I read, it's not crazy to me. Like, it sounds that way to just start talking to people that aren't, like, don't have any context. But for one thing, just like you can't really, experience is the greatest teacher because that's when you can really truly like embody or like learn something.
Yeah.
And it was a few journeys in before I had a spiritual feeling, and I thought to myself, this is what people mean when they say they found God or whatever they call it. Like this is the feeling.
Mhm.
And I was also like agnostic prior, but that
Yeah.
feeling now, you people, I'll read things that sound so out there and I don't even question it. I'm like, no, that feels right. That
Yeah.
feels accurate.
Well, and also like who are we to think that like
that humans know all the answers
right.
to
Like I'm like, we're such a blip on
it
the
literally
radar.
changes every decade anyway. So to
Right.
think that this is it, what
Right.
they're teaching in current textbooks, that's
Right.
where science stops.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And also too, like the more work I've done, the more open I've been to like what I see, and the more open I am, like the more I see. So
Yeah.
like it's funny, one of our first interviews we had somebody come on and I'm like a month or two out of my first mushroom journey. So like everything was still very very new for me. And I used to have a very black and white way of thinking.
Yeah.
And the woman was talking about astral projection. And we did a funny video cuz the whole time like I have like bug eyes. I'm like, what's that? Like, what is she talking about? Like, it was so outside of everything that I had been taught to believe.
Yeah.
And then
that's what it is.
Right. And then I started doing breath work. And then guess who astral projected? My ass did. Yeah. And I was like, just because it hasn't happened to you, just because you haven't experienced it, just because you can't see it, just because you don't know about it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
The U.S. government had a team who was doing research on astral projection during the Cold War because the Soviets, they had intel that the Soviets had a group of people who had the ability to astral project and spy using that modality. And so they had found the people that, we would call strange or whatever, in the US, and it was a top secret, research group. And it has since been declassified. I actually watched a documentary on it, and I can't remember what it was called. But that's an easy Google search. Like all of that's been declassified.
But it's funny because it's like we're so
but
conditioned.
To say that to somebody, they're like, that sounds nuts.
Right. And I was totally guilty of it. And it wasn't like I was closed off to it. I was just like, I've never heard this before. I've never heard somebody talk like this before. But now, like, I'm around people who do talk about it. So it's not weird. Like it's so normal and I've experienced it. So I'm like, no, this is actually real. Like I've actually experienced it. And now I'm so much more open to like, I know nothing.
Yeah.
I literally know nothing. And I'm just here to like learn.
I watched something yesterday that literally said, how humbling is it? Dr. Joe Dispenza, I love him. He said,
love him.
How humbling is it to realize that we know so little about everything around us? And that came up in my last journey. It was very difficult. You were the first person, you weren't the first person. I texted you. You were the second person that I reached out to and was like,
I'm honored.
Christine. And you wrote back and were like, girl. But at the end of it, I could see all of this. And there was like all of these like symbols and like math type. And what I took it to mean was we know so little.
Do you get facials?
Yep. I go to Bellotox and get hydrofacials. I love hydrofacials. They suck everything out.
Yeah. Okay, where were we?
Well, we're leaving that in there, and I'm gonna get a cred on that or something. Like I shouted you guys out. We were talking about ayahuasca.
Oh yeah.
And I loved your story, and I think it's so special that it was right before. I'll let you tell it, but I just love the story.
Yeah, so we interviewed a guy named Steve Hupp. He calls himself the Trailer Park Shaman. Mm-hmm. He had a show on Vice called Kentucky Ayahuasca, and we interviewed him, and then he ended up inviting us to do an ayahuasca retreat. And so myself and Leah and then two other people, we did an ayahuasca ceremony. And
so wait, you did it in like
Kentucky
at his church, right?
Yeah, so that's like the way to be able to do these substances legally is that you say like it's a part of your sacrament, which I'm like
protected.
Hell yeah.
Well, there's a mushroom church here. It's the Sanctuary with the P.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've explained that at my Nerd Night talk. It's really interesting because
what's a Nerd Night talk?
Oh my gosh, you'd be great at it. It's just this thing at Gravely where like if you just nerd out on something, you like some sort of topic, you can just go and talk about it.
That's so funny. I would do Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really? Not you wouldn't talk about
I
mushrooms,
mean,
you'd
I
talk about
could,
Game
but
of Thrones.
yeah. Yeah, I would. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I think people would love that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna connect you with the guy because a friend of mine knew him and was like recommended me and was like my friend was like, you should do this. You know Brian. I think you've met Brian before. My friend Brian.
Okay.
He's the one that got me to do it, and I just kind of talked about like
Oh, yeah.
it was right before my you sat with me for my heroic dose. It was but I talked about microdosing and just inner child work and anyways, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Nerd night, I said shit is happening. The moment where I'm like, I lost that train of thought. I told you it happens once in every episode.
ADHD.
I'm like, shit, okay.
Two girls with ADHD
Nerd
walk
night.
into a podcast studio.
It was nerd night, and I said that. I said something that you just said about not about ayahuasca. Oh, the religious sacrament.
Oh, okay.
So it's interesting because to protect indigenous cultures who used these medicines
As a form of healing.
because everything on that clicked for me, and I wanted to say earlier when we were talking to Noah about it was when I'm late to the party because obviously you've talked about this before, but everything on this earth that humans need, it was already here.
Right.
So what we call medicine that you get from made by a pharmaceutical company is synthetic. It's them attempting to synthetically replicate what was in some sort of plant.
Right.
And so to say plant medicine sounds like I have a friend recently, I said that to him and he cracked up laughing. He's like, so what am I taking? Pill-based medicine? And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
you
it's
are.
fake.
Yeah. And again, like, don't even get me started on like big pharma because I'm like, if that works so well, why are we so sick? Like, we are the first generation who's expected to not outlive our parents.
The twisted ass part is that people think it's crazy to say plant-based medicine. It's just medicine. Medicine is supposed to be natural. It's not supposed to be this synthetic. And so what helped him is when I explained, I said, remember when we were in high school and everybody was getting sick off of that fake weed? It was like fucking people up.
I know what you're talking
It
about.
starts with an S. Salvia, maybe?
Sativa?
It's not called.
Okay.
I think it's called salvia.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
sativa is the fake sugar. But in high school, there were people that like it really messed people
You're
up.
thinking of stevia.
What the fuck is sativa then?
It's a oh my gosh, it's a strand of
Oh,
weed.
weed. You're right.
I just
An
had,
indica and
I was like,
sativa.
yeah. I was like, you're
I
like, that's a
just-
form of sugar. I'm like,
just gaslit the fuck out of you too.
I
I said, no.
I'm like, I don't think so. Anyways.
Anyways, my example was whatever the fake weed was. I said because it was not real weed, it was fake, it was synthetic, it was a
Yeah.
perversion of weed, and
Yeah.
it made people sick. It's not
Yeah.
weed grows in the ground. I was like,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with like pharmaceuticals versus like plant medicine.
Right.
It's just medicine that's natural.
Yeah. Well, it's like the people that we deem as like weird or wrong are like witches getting burned at the stake. It's like, oh, those were just healers. They weren't witches. they're just medicine women.
And I'm still in my like I'm still growing. Like I had coffee with our friend Kayla the other
Oh.
day, and I had this moment. I thought about it after. I was like, wow, shows me something. We were sitting like in the coffee shop, and people were close to us, and she was like, "Do you want to sit outside?" And I was like, "Maybe we should sit outside before we start talking about all the witchy stuff." It's like, what? Why did I say that? You know what I mean? Because she was like, I'm just going to go ahead and yell out, I'm a witch
Yeah.
to everybody in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. I mean, it's valid. I get it. But it's like I met with somebody in a coffee shop yesterday. I'm like, yeah, so mushrooms and the universe and whatever. And I'm like, the people around me are probably like, she's crazy. To that, I say, I mean, maybe.
But I feel confident in everything that I believe now. So why did I have this moment of like, oh, I don't want these people to
Yeah.
hear us talking and
Yeah.
sound great, you know.
But it's funny because it's like when people give like I would never do that, or mushrooms, you know, they lump it in like with a drug, and like a lot of times I'm just asking them questions and trying to see like what they know, about it, and I'm like, oh, they don't know anything about it. Okay, that makes a
Got
lot of
it.
sense. Got it. Gotcha. So yeah, somebody who had a bad experience. Oh, they did this, and yeah, that's why. We talk in the podcast a lot about like education and harm reduction, and so people do these safely and effectively, but also like this medicine is very, very sacred, and so like you should use it with that intention, and if you don't, it might
That's the loop.
smack you on the butt a little bit.
And that's the loophole, what you just said, sacred. Indigenous cultures used it, and to protect like their ceremonies, that was what the loophole in the
Yeah.
law was.
Yeah.
And so now you have these, back to ayahuasca,
Yeah.
the church. It's because if you have a religion or a church, using it as a sacrament is sort of a loophole
Right.
in the law.
Right. Yeah, no, ayahuasca was one powerful bitch. It was a 2-day ceremony. So the first day, you took a smaller dose, and I really don't remember anything from it. I just remember I was uncontrollably sobbing the entire time. And I think I just had a lot of emotions that I still needed to get out. And I
Yeah.
felt like my first journey, it was like, we're all onions, and my first journey was like a layer peeled, and ayahuasca was another layer peeled, and just using all of these modalities to like help me continue to like find myself.
I
But
love that word, that analogy of the onion.
yeah, because it's I'm always
There's
trying to
layers.
evolve and change, and there's always something for me to learn and heal from. And so the second night is when you take a little bit of a larger dose, which there's a wonderful video of me on the internet throwing up from it.
Why
Someone,
is somebody videotaping it?
well, we had a videographer there.
Oh, because you were like, I
Yeah.
want to document this
Yeah.
experience.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so that's why. Somebody once said, she was like, I think I did ayahuasca. She's like, I got it in this little fruity drink, and I'm like, girl, you did not do ayahuasca. Ayahuasca, you feel like you're eating or drinking earth, and it doesn't necessarily taste great. You
Also,
feel like, yeah,
you would know.
yeah, if you take ayahuasca. I saw that they have like ayahuasca gummies, and I don't know how that's even possible, but yeah, took a larger dose, and then we're like all in one room, but it's like separated. We're all separated, and we all each have like a cot and a chair. And everywhere you go, you have to carry a bucket around with you, like a puke bucket, because
the
purging, yeah, it's very common to, and purging is not just like I'm gonna shit my pants or I'm gonna throw up. Like I threw up a ton. Some people didn't throw up at all. Some people purging is like crying, it's laughing,
Well, I
it's
feel like it's shoving out so much
it's
trapped energy that stuff coming out of your body is just part of it.
So Leah, her like she couldn't stop shaking. Like her body was just shaking. It
Trembling
was
all the
like
shit
her
out.
leg. It was like Thumper
That's
from
amazing.
Bambi. Yeah. So for me, mine was throwing up, and so it's like I'm like laying on my side on the cot, and I'm like holding my puke bucket, and it's like I'm throwing up, and I'm like looking at my puke, and I like go into like
shit.
another realm. And it's crazy because it's a lot of like the first thing that happened was a lot of past people in my life who were no longer in my life anymore. So like relationships, friendships, and it was like a feeling of like gratitude for them, that they were in my life at that period of time for a purpose, for a reason. But now like I can like let that go and move on to this next chapter.
Yeah.
And then that's where like Tony and Kai and my bonus daughters show up, and like feeling like this just deep, deep love and gratitude for them, and like family and home. And so that was like another part of it. But then, so with ayahuasca, it's a mother spirit, and that's Mother Aya. And so a lot of people, when they do ayahuasca, they say, I know, they say that Mother Aya may show up for you. And for me, it was like I was like in this moment of feeling just like so much love and gratitude for my family. And then it was like, I'm still like on my side and I'm like watching my hands and I'm like literally watch her like come into my body. And I watch my hands like turn into like this old woman. And she's like, this sounds weird, but she's inside of me.
Yeah.
And she like takes my hands and she like makes me like put them on myself and like hug myself and like caress my face and like play with my hair and like truly embody like what it means to like love yourself. And I feel like so many of these journeys at the core of it is love.
Yeah.
And and so I came out of that experience where again I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I felt like things just like clicked and this is what it means to continue to love myself and to like continue to like really embody that." And I came out with like the biggest smile on my face. I look like I have like sex hair and people are like, "Whoa, like what happened to you?" And I'm just like, "So much love. That's what happened to me." Like I got to just like love myself. So it's like
Uh,
even when like in the beginning when there's like past people who I'm like, "Oh, like why are you here?"
yeah.
Like the lesson is always like love. And I feel like all of these journeys that I do, like that's like the core of it is love. Whether it's loving myself more, loving other people, learning to love my life, like all of
It's
it. Yeah.
really well put. I that gives me a lot to think about because I feel like every time like every time I have an intent, self-love is at the root of the
Yeah.
why the intent is why I need that intent.
Yeah. And I mean usually like, you know, when we're wounded and we're traumatized and then, you know, we turn into adults and we're projecting that on other people, it's like there's a loss of love there always. Like and so it's learning to like lead with love when I do things. That's another area of like trying to step into like my softness is like doing things out of love and with that intention. So, yeah.
And I think when you do that, it's what I'm learning is like checking your intention on everything you do.
Yeah.
Like when you're uncertain about if something is in your path or what you're supposed to be doing, when you check in with your true intention and you're honest about that, if it's genuinely to help to put out positivity into
Yeah.
the collective, then you're on the right
Yeah.
track.
Yeah.
I read
Absolutely.
something recently that was like some of us look for this big purpose. Sometimes the purpose is literally just exactly what you just said,
Yeah.
like just putting out love
Yeah.
into the world by showing that to yourself.
Absolutely.
Would you do ayahuasca again since your first time? Maybe you like blacked out some, or it sounds like you don't. There was like parts where there was so much purging that maybe you lost like consciousness or whatever, so that you'd
Um
have more clarity in your.
I would do it absolutely in a heartbeat
Yeah.
again. Like I'm and I think that's where like maybe I don't know if it's stupidity or bravery, but like it doesn't it does I may get nervous before I do it, but like I'm willing to do anything and I'm willing to continue to like see myself in a deeper way and put more good energy out into the world. Like I want my goal in this life is to like just never stop healing and evolving. Now, sometimes I think, you know, I have to take breaks and I'm learning that healing and evolving is also just like learning to have fun and laugh and be silly and like enjoy the moment and be present and not like it doesn't always have to be like the heavy hard work.
Yeah. I love what you posted about. It was just something on the See You on the Other Side page, and you said TikTok will tell us this isn't serious enough for healing. Has someone seriously commented that?
Oh, so like we get tore up by men in the psychedelic
You
space.
aren't serious enough all for
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah. So like we on a TikTok we went viral and it was like the TikTok we did was like we're making fun of ourselves. We're like,
Uh-huh.
I'm a psychonaut. Like,
Oh, I love that
yeah, yeah,
TikTok.
yeah. And
It was so cute.
I know, but men and to me it just shows
I
like
feel like it's
they're
wounded masculinity to be triggered by like playful feminine energy like that.
right. And I think again, I'm like, isn't the point of these medicines to help you find yourself and like isn't the point of this to not fit in a box, but here you are because we don't look like a certain way, or like we like pink, or we can joke and we can laugh and we're really goofy together and can have a lot of fun, that it's like we're not taking it seriously. And it's like I'm taking healing so seriously that I'm learning to have fun.
It was the TikTok.
Right. But
It's the only serious TikToks.
right, but it also further proves like why maybe we need more women, why maybe we need more playfulness in this space and
Yes.
fun. And like I don't have to like, okay, so yeah, I'm a mom, and you know, I like pink and I like certain things, but like so I'm shouldn't be taken as seriously, or I'm less than because I don't fit into what you think like someone in the plant medicine space. Well, fuck that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not here to fit in a box. I'm here to just show up as my most authentic version of myself. And whoever like relates to that and gravitates toward that, then those are my people. But like, if you're
That's well,
not
you're a bridge
right,
for people that can relate to you
right,
first as a person, to say, wow, I really relate to her as a person. She's like me. I see myself reflect. That's what representation in a space is.
right,
I see her reflected in me. She's a mom like me, or she's, a woman that's had these experiences like me, and she's using that and it's helping her. Maybe I can too.
well, and here's the other thing too. I've always felt like I've struggled to fit into spaces. So like in my home, I felt like I was too
I get
dramatic,
that.
too loud, too much. Growing up in Iowa, I didn't feel like I fit in because I didn't look like the other girls. I didn't have the same like family story as the other girls, or you know, the other people in my class. Like I always, and even in this space, there are a lot of people like you can listen to Dr. Huberman talk about psilocybin, and he's very scientific, very like research based. Or you could listen to somebody also in the psilocybin space, and they're like, they've got dreadlocks and they're, you know, what you would consider like that hippie woo woo person. All of those are great, but that's not me. And so I have kind of struggled in this space of like, what is like my role in the plant medicine space, because I feel like I don't fit that stereotype, and I feel like I don't fit that stereotype. And um we had this really wonderful person that we interviewed, and like I actually cried in the interview about like how I struggle with how to show up. And like I think, and I know the answer, I think I struggle sometimes with like my bigness because I feel like it turns people off, and but those aren't my people. And I think the biggest thing for me is like I don't need to show up as this or that or this. Like I just have to show up as myself. And that is, yes, that strong, that powerful, that opinionated woman, but that's also like the really goofy, the really silly, like likes to joke, loves to make people laugh, like, you know, is down for whatever. That person too. Like I'm very multifaceted, and so I don't have to show up as anything or anyone. I just have to be me, and the right people will like what I have to say, and if you don't, that's okay too, but then you're just not my audience. But I'm not going to try to mold to be like what you want me to be. I've done that a lot of my life, and I don't want to do that anymore.
I've been having a really hard time with that lately.
Really?
Yeah, I've got a lot of different like for one thing, sometimes I cringe when I listen cuz I am very twangy, and it's not I'm also like don't dislike that. Like I'm country. I grew up in country as fuck, like, and I'm like I feel like my style versus that versus like the things that I'm interested in are all so all over the place that I have a lot of like moments where I'm like, oh, I need to be less like that, or I need to be more
Imposter
like
syndrome?
this. Yeah. And feeling like I need to fit more into a box, or I'm like, oh, I'm too much of that. So like there's also a part of me that's like, no, you can like, but then I'm like, is that reality? And so I've just been like battling with that,
Yeah.
like feeling exactly what you just described. It's
Yeah.
hard
It is. It's
because as soon as you
super
tell
hard.
yourself you're fine with it, then you get like all this feedback, and it's so difficult to keep like pulling that off.
Yeah. And it's interesting cuz for me like how I see you, Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like the way that I've watched you evolve in what, the last like 8 months? How long has it been since your
Like
first journey?
6 months.
Okay, 6 months. Like, has been incredible because I feel like I'm watching you like figure out who Taylor is.
Yeah, I just feel like I still don't fully know.
But that's okay too. I think I think it's about showing up as like what feels good for you at the moment. You're always going to evolve and you're always going to grow, but like just showing up as you and the right people. Like, I'm gravitated towards you because I see you. There may be other people who don't see you the way that I see you, but those aren't your people. That's not your audience.
They didn't know me in the past life.
Yeah. And I I think we have very like similar energy, and so I see it and I respect that, and I understand that you were that way because of a you had to be and you felt like that. But like, I love the authentic Taylor that's showing up in this space now. So yeah, keep doing you, girl. Like, you got your people.
You know what helped me a lot was, at first I felt like everything I said had to be very clinical, very like, oh,
I
well,
have
what if
felt like
somebody
that
questions
too.
this, or what if it's research? Who am I to, like, if Huberman's out there, why am I talking about things? And I have a friend that said to me, and it really stuck. He said, experiential knowledge is valuable. And who is the only source of your experiential knowledge?
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
So, like, that helped me so much shift in being like, I can just talk about whatever and there's still value in that. I don't have
Yeah.
to regurgitate like studies all the time, because I have experiential knowledge that I can speak to. And like you said, like, some people it will mean something to and other people it won't. And I
Yeah.
think that's the beautiful thing about like different stories,
Absolutely. And I will be the first person to own, like, oh shit, I thought this. I wasn't right. And, you know, like, we're always ever evolving and changing. And I think that is totally fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I don't even know where we are. We're probably like 3 hours in. But
Story of our
I feel
lives.
like this has been so good. Like, I'm really, I feel like there's so much here. I'm
Yeah.
excited to like watch it when I get back.
Yeah. I have a lot of love for you, Tay Tay.
I love you too. This is beautiful. Okay, I want to close out with your what guides you and what your purpose is, which I feel like we've kind of, but
What guides me is honestly, I feel like it's now kind of like I want to be really conscious of like the energy I put out into the world and the way that I show up. So that's why I really do take like healing, which healing can be ayahuasca journeys, and healing can also be like being a feral little rat to
smashing up
sometimes
these printers down at the rage room like we're gonna
or
do.
just being like goofy or whatever. But I feel like all of that is healing. And I feel like I don't know what I genuinely don't know what my purpose is, because I feel like I'm always evolving and always changing. Right now,
You're helping a lot of people. I mean, you sat with me. Your page
Yeah.
is what took me to like finally be interested in, that modality, which I did need.
Yeah.
Everybody's needs are different, what they find, what tools they find, but I genuinely think shrooms were what I needed.
Yeah, but I think something that's really been showing up for me just like very, very recently is like accepting my bigness and showing up in the world as truly my most authentic self and just owning it, and the right people who want to hear what I have to say are going to come. So, yeah.
I think that maybe that's kind of telling you that you need to do that, because that's going to be a part of your larger purpose. Like,
Yeah.
everything you've done has been giving you the tools and the skills that you need to get there.
Yeah, my last journey showed me that like seeking things out is not what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to just be who I am, and then things will come to me.
Yeah.
So I don't really know like what all that means, but I'm excited to see. So,
Me too.
yeah.
Thank you so much
You are so
for
welcome.
everything. Bye, friends.